Count me in. Korea is a mid-sized land, surrounded by China, Russia, and Japan. A humble nation surrounded by three mighty forces.
We love you, Jeffrey!
Long ago it was known as the Hermit Kingdom. Isolated from the world but self-sufficient, Korea had its own language and inventions and resources. But when the rest of the world reached colonial times, Europe and Japan both wanted that colonial prize. East and West wanted Korea. Who would win? It was Japan that annexed Korea in 1910. And life under the Japanese was cruel. The Korean landlords and police helped them rule. The rich Koreans and the Japanese imperialists collaborated. And the first Korean communist was a woman, Alexandra Kim. She lived in Russia, but a few Koreans joined in. Maybe communism could get rid of the Japanese they all hated. The Korean Communist Party was just a few people at best, but one was Kim Song-ju, a teenage student who got arrested. When Kim got out, he fled and joined the Chinese army. He fought in China, not Korea, but he fought the Japanese. And a legend spread back in Korea about a Korean army commander fighting in China. Kim Il-sung, meaning become the sun, became the new name of this star. And when Kim was the last commander left alive in his section, and the Japanese had his troops down to just a fraction, he led his last men to safety across a river to the USSR. And so the next chapter in Kim Il-sung's life began. He left Mao's army and was retrained as a Soviet army man, fought in Stalin's army through World War II, and when the Japanese were crushed, it was Korea's dream come true. But like Germany after the Nazis were finished, Korea was also in question with the Japanese banished. Would it be the communist East or the capitalist West that would give it direction? So just like the new East and West Germany, a similar decision fell to cut it in half along the 38th parallel, the North to Stalin's Russia, the South to America's protection. Stalin picked Kim Il-sung to be the leader of the North. Syngman Rhee was the South's leader, America put forth. And through the late 40s was a propaganda fight. Both called the other a puppet, and both were sort of right. Well, one big problem with North Korea, to be fair. There were very few Korean communists there. The leaders were mostly foreigners from China and the Soviet Union. Then on the other hand, a big problem with South Korea, to be fair, was that America put back in power the rich Koreans there. All the bad ones who collaborated with Japan came right back to rule them. Another irony is Korea had its own communist party, but it was based in the South, where it just couldn't get anything started. Meanwhile, both leaders were like pawns, hoping to be kings, wanting to conquer the other and rule everything. Well, in 1950, Kim got Stalin's permission. He sent the North Korean troops across the border on a mission. The weak South Koreans fled, like Kim hoped would happen. But Kim underestimated how much America was committed. He thought the U.S. wouldn't send troops to Korea, but they did. So it was Kim's turn to flee north, because it was our good excuse to see him flattened. But then it was America's turn for a disastrous turnabout. We hadn't thought the giant Chinese Communist Army would come out. So the Korean War was Americans versus Chinese, with Korea in the crossfire of this mini World War III. Well, we reinforced with new technologies like napalm, but the Chinese seemed endless. There was talk of using an A-bomb, and for 3 horrible years there was slaughter and nobody winning. But then America and China backed off because they were even. But with millions of Koreans dead and cities destroyed for no reason, the country was divided the same as it had been at the war's beginning. Kim still wanted power, but needed Russia and China's help. The only rivals he could get rid of were Korean communists themselves. And he told everyone to believe in Juche, his philosophy of self-reliance. And he did improve North Korea's economy and science. So North Korea prospered for a time, but by the 70s it was in decline. Kim picked his son, Kim Jong-il, to lead in case of his departure. North Korea even started nuclear power programs, but the economy kept slowing and slowing, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, it lost its most important economic partner. And just like a metaphor for the growing problems of his past, old Kim grew a neck tumor they had to crop out of photographs. In fact, it grew so big it got in fistfights with his kid. Okay, that didn't really happen, but it would have been crazy if it did. Now North Korea is a hermit kingdom once again, ruled by Kim Jong-il and his army men, isolated from the world even worse than it was in the past. But if North Korea can get rid of its nukes more tomorrow, it can still be an example for the rest of the world to follow. Maybe trade sanctions will lift, people will rise, and make their own fate at last. Thanks.